Uba kaloku ikhwelo lityala. Namhlanje umhlono omahluko uThalitha ugqwesile.
Mandibulise mhlali ngaphambili Ntoshi nokhala. Ndibulise kananjalo ku Dr. Eshula kumzi wakwana college ngobubanzi kwindwendwe zonke ezikhoyo ingakumbi abafundi namafama akowethu. Andazi nokuba ide yavela nala video kuba ibisondlalela kanobum le ntetho yam esixelelayo ukuba kutheni silapha namhlanje. Ugamede ke ubekile lo mcimbi wacaca, and I will not go back to what he has covered already, because ours is a partnership that is based on development of our local communities. But we recognize the importance of young people in doing that, as well as integrating the learnings from the university with what is happening in practice. So also, as Dr. Eshula said, that there are a number of objectives for today. Some of you will recall that Talitha was launched. It came to market on the 13th of August in 2013. And at that point, I also want to recognize all the women of South Africa, and in particular, the women here present, and wish you a very happy and progressive Women's Month. So we made certain promises as Talitha Pharma, particularly committing to the farming community in the communal areas, that we will not share with them what we know, but we will give them everything we have got. So this is one of those vehicles, as you will see as the program develops, that is doing exactly that, offering the farmers, the farming community, particularly in the communal areas, more than what we as Talitha can do. Now, one of the things that is absolutely critical to consider is this. We all know that for development, if we touch on the strategic objective of this, the development or the contribution, economic contribution of communal farmers to our South African economy will be accelerated more when communal farmers, or a lot of the bigger communal farmers, get their own farming land. But it will be ignorant of us to believe that within the next year, 2, or even 5 years, most of these farmers will be on their own farms. Hence, the theme of this webinar, that is looking.
Thanks, Mr. Mbochelwa. Mr. Mbochelwa, CEO at Talitha Pharma. UTalitha ucelebrate 8 years ekhona. Siyabulela kuTalitha o-recognize omama kule nyanga yomama, nokuqinisekisa into yoba i-program directors uzinika abantu abangomama. Ndifuna ukukhumbuza ke i-participants, kukho i-link elapha kwi-chat ye-CPD points for animal health technicians and all people who are in the animal health, your vet and all that. So ba-research pha, they get 3 CPD points. Abantu mhlawumbi abangenemva bazawubuza uba kutheni bengenazimakhe ecankwabo, switch off only for i-speakers ne-program directors ezivuliweyo i-speakers. So nabaphakamisa izandla siyaxolisa, sizawudibana phaa kwi-discussions. Sizawucela ke into yoba njengoba sizawuhla neprogram, abantu bathathe amaphepha neencwadi babhale izinto abafuna uzibuza, because sizawubuza phaa ekugqibeleni. Bese samkele ke kwabafike late nguDr. Eshula, siyaqhuba ke neprogram. Ngoku sizawungena ke ngoku kwi-speakers zethu ezizawuthetha ke phantsi kwalo mgomo sowubekiwe ngasentla we-strategic approach to accelerate agriculture economic transformation in favor of communal and smallholder farmers in the Eastern Cape. Sizawungena ke kumfama wethu, uTata uKondile, upha eqhaga, uzawukwabelana ke nathi namafama ethu naye wonke umuntu olapha ngento ayenza phayana. Itopic ke sizawungena kuyo naye ithi Communal Farming for Profit and Active Farmers Perspective. Mr. Kondile, sinikela ko. Enkosi.
Sisintosho ngathi uMr Kondile noba mhlawumbe sakhutshwe inetwork andimboni apha. Ungabe mhlawumbe masibe sidlala ividiyo mhlawumbe kulaa ndawo yebo ngexesha salinde yena. Injani kanjani?
Okay, Mr. Mpaipeli. Thank you. Masikhe sibukele ividiyo ke. Enkosi.
Yes, Mr. Kondile simfumene.
Enkosi Mr. Mpayipheli ngevideo amangisa into obukayipresenta ngaphambili. Sesamkelwe kwabasanda ungena. Wonke omnye umuntu akazokwazi imic yakhe ayibone. Only aba bapresentayo ne-directors zeprogram. Then into esizayicela ke ngoku uzawungena utata uKondile. Sicele ke ngoku into ethi ezi speakers zilandelayo abantu bathatha incwadi amaphepha babhale phansi into abazafuna uzibuza. Sizaya kwi-discussion kulapho ke ngoku sizavulwa khona imic ukwenzela uba wonke umuntu apha kwi-meeting chat siyacela i-technicians kukho i-link for i-CPD point. You get restart no-Savak. So siyacela abantu bayifumanela you just go to the meeting chat ninyukhangele seyifapha ngaphambili baza nimtshelo emane ifaka. Abangakwazi ukuyibona okanye bazayicela bayithunyelwe nge-email. Sizawunikela kuwe ke tata uKondile bese sichazile ke umfama okhoyo olapha eQhaga ojongene negusha sayichaza ke ne-topic ozawuthetha phansi ke ube uyangena ke ngoku. Enkosi kakhulu. Tata uKondile sizabe silinde wena. Inkosi. Siyaxolisa eziwebinar wena yonke lento intsha kuthi so isekhona ingxaki phaa kwelaa cala katata uKondile. Sixolisa kakhulu. Ndicelile ke kubantu abazawudinga le link for i-CPD points nindithumelele, ndibhalile phaa kwi-meeting chat my email address nguntombekhaya ono.h.faku@dr.da.gov.za. Ndiyacela niye kwi-meeting chat nikhangele i-email address yam phayana ndinithumelele by email le link ukwenzela uba nizokwazi ufumana lo 3 CPD point, but only for animal health technician because siyinikwe nguSavak lo nyweba babafumana ezaa points zintathu. Sizawudlula ke utata uKondile mandixolise uzawungena emveni koDr Ngethu. Ngoku siyadlula ke siya kuDr Ngethu oyivet. UDr Ngethu ke usisithethi semini yethu yanamhlanje. Sisebenze kakhulu ke naye uDr Ngethu. Abantu abaninzi bayamazi. Abanye bamazi from high school, abanye varsity, abanye ngokwenza ivet. So sisebenze naye kakhulu, abantu abaninzi bayamazi. UDr Ngethu ke njengoba senditshilo kuba uyivet uzawuthetha ke nge-comprehensive sheep management approach for profitable and sustainable communal farming. Dr Ngethu sizawunikela kuwe. Sizanicela ke Mr Mpayipheli no Mr Mbothelwa nimanincedisa phaa utata uKondile malunga nento zevidiyo kuba ngoku sidlulile kuye. Then ke ngoku yena uzawukwazi ungena ngoku emveni koDr Ngethu. Thanks. Dr. Ngeti sinikela ku.
Molweni mzwakwethu, mandibulele kwentoshi, ndibulele nakuwe owe. Ngakakumbi bhotisa nakomama kuba ke athi amaciko xa ethetha woman is an abbreviation for well organized man. Ndicinga binjalo singqina sonke. Ndibulise ngokukuko kwiindalutho zethu nangakumbi unocollege isebe namafama ethu nezityudaka sithi namkelekile sibamba ngazo zozibini uba sidibene siza kwabelana. Uba ithe kanti incinci mzwakwethu ningakhali besizama uthi sikhangele ityebileyo mhlawumbi ke ngelishwa sixhele ebusika. As untoshi ebetshilo, the discussion we're going to have today andani uba iyabonakala i-presentation.
Not yet, Doc. Not yet.
Not yet. Mazama uyiloada kwakhona. Okay. I hope it iyavela.
Kunjalo noJawolo.
All right. Special greetings to everyone oye wasijoyina namhlanje. Ndinguxolele kangethu ke mzwakwethu iwele likamxolisi kwabe bengayazi. I've been given a huge small task for today. Something that intimidates you. Into bakuthiwe share the little that you know. Nabantu. But when you know nothing, upasu grade 1 okanye A, and then when you realize you know even little, upasu grade 2 njalo njalo. Those are the aspects of life. What we are going to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen, we want to share a little bit on health and production related matters to sheep. We're not going to dwell much on the specific details. Mainly kukuthi nje nhlo nozamubonala izinto ba in terms of where we are as a country, siphina thina as amafama amnyama. Before I get into the gist of the presentation, as program directors, allow me to share a little story of an owl and a centipede. Kuthiwa in a forest, big forest, mhlambi lamahlathi afana noLangeni. There was an owl that over the years had grown and and gained a reputation of being the wisest animal in the forest, because he could solve almost every problem that was brought to him. Then one day, Isongololo, a centipede, approached him apparently with a big problem. Naturally, the owl was always used in addressing this problem. So the centipede joined the queue until his turn came, and in his small voice greeted Mr. Owl. I've heard, you helped many people, but in a problem, I hope you'll help me. The owl looked at the centipede and said, no, centipede, if I'm in a problem, I can solve it anytime. The centipede said, Mr. Owl, the problem in now, I've got a deep pain and wazulala in one of my legs. But the problem in denial, I cannot tell which leg it is. The owl looked at the centipede and the 100 legs and said, yo, I've never heard this. He looked at the owl and the centipede and said, yo, centipede, the problem gawe, you've got too many legs. If you were a mouse or a bird, I would have been able to help you, but the problem, you've got too many legs. It makes me think, ladies and gentlemen, about the many situations the communal setup is always challenged with through years and decades of farming. It's a plethora of many things, but we'll get deep into it. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to just take a little bit from the NDP. As you know, our country, as a new democracy, we've been developing programs that are mainly geared to reverse the legacy of the many negative things that befell our country before 1994. We've had many policies and plans put into place, and currently the plan that a national government has developed and entrusted is what we call the NDP, the National Development Plan. In the NDP, what we've accepted, ladies and gentlemen, the NDP says the rural farmers all have we have a responsibility as a country to take our farmers and put them into the main frame of key rural development. And because of the ruralness of the area, the key activity is agriculture, which needs more than just microscopic focus. It needs electronic microscope focus, if I can put it that way. And then just to give a picture of what is happening with small stock, if we were to look into our slide, we've broken it down into livestock ownership, mainly sheep, in terms of the group dynamics we have as a country. If we are Jonga black farmers there, the country has got 19 million sheep, more or less. Out of the 19 million sheep, Ama Farmer Myanmar have got about 6 million, making it about 32% of that. So the question we need to ask ourselves is, what is the contribution of that 32% in the agricultural economic development space? Ingakanani role edlalwa ngamafama ethu? And this statistics, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important to illustrate that. Kutwa, there was a young chap who went up and down, causing havoc, just shouting, 21, 21, 21. Man, what is this 21 that you're talking about? This young chap would just keep on shouting, 21, 21, 21, until somebody got fed up, confronted the young man The young man ignored, kept on shouting 21. So this fellow that was confronting got even more fed up and then decided to throw a punch, and the young man ducked through his own punch. And unfortunately, the man was trying to stop this man from shouting 21, fell on the ground there and then. Guess what? The young man continued shouting now, 22, 22, 22. So statistic is not just merely a figure. Statistics has got to have value, has got to have a significance. So this 32% of livestock owner ngamafama amnyama, it has to be in context of what we want to achieve as a country, nationally and internationally, and certainly in the local area. Ngokwephondo, xa sicaphula kwispeech somama wethu Mama Peters xa ebebeka umba wesebe kulonyaka sikuwo 2021-2022, ucaphula into yoba ngokwephononongo kwiphondo amafama amnyama anemfuyo engu-65% ngokwalapha ephondweni. Kodwa xa kuyiwa pha kwesasikali sikaNebukadnezar menemene utekele uba la context besithetha ngayo ingakanani indima edlalwa ile mfuyo yamafama ethu, okwangoku ilishwa lomhluzi amanqina isengu-7%, meaning that wena ulisesebeni, wena usistudent, wena ungumhloshi kwanocollege, wena ungumfama, we all have a responsibility of changing the situation. Kuba kaloku xa u-65% equator to 7%, it means there's still a lot that needs to be done. I saw which that Mr. Kondile bethethe phambi kwam ndizomane ndisithi hayi ke njengoba besetshilo umntaka Kondile kodwa ke kugqithekile, kodwa all we need to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the statistics and the figures, there's room for growth, there's room for development. Kodwa ke the question we need to ask, which leg of the centipede has got a problem? We have that responsibility to find uba ithole lifele phina for us to be able to say we've got a meaningful contribution in changing the situation. As we know, livestock on its own, livestock farming on its own, kule country is mainly categorized into commercial farming and small scale. We've got many names for it. We don't really have one word. Maybe about Dr. Shula, no, Mr. Mpaipeli and the students, through their engagement, they will eventually help us to have a meaning definition of the farming sector that is not yet commercial, because as you know, kukamagama small scale, kungene no subsistence, kungene no communal, which is the definition of the farming space, kungene no emerging. Apho abantu bati iyabhida lento emerging farmers. How long does it take to emerge? Because these farms have been emerging since time memorial. Uthi ke uBhenke in 1985, which is one of the predominantly used definition of the farming system. Xa ithetha nge-farming, mainly livestock farming. Uthi the essence of livestock farming, as we know, in terms of red meat development, is that eventually the animal is slaughtered for meat. The difference between the commercial sector and the subsistence farming, which I think it is his way of combining everything that is not commercial. The commercial sector does everything in its powers to get the maximum value out of the animal before it's slaughtered. Meanwhile, on the other side, on the subsistence farming, the farmers mainly use meat as the end product, as something else. Meanwhile, we derive everything that the animal can produce. I've been part of the National Red Meat Development Program, ladies and gentlemen, since 2005. And even before one wasn't part, as a program, I've been part of that. There was a stage we were evaluating our impact, and then we invited an economist that was based in Cape Town around 2008, 2009, if I'm not mistaken. After we had been implementing the program for 3 years, this agri-economist said, no, you guys, what are you trying to do in trying to improve productivity in the sector goes against the gradient and the main intent of communal farming, because communal farming, it's about ufumanoblongo for usinda okanye amalongo for ubasa or amadaka kwinto ezidibene negusha. It was never about maximizing the value, you know. Umhlobo wami uMathemba, who was my colleague then, was so livid such that we had to restrain him at Kaswailand. So let's look at the definition ka benke. And he has how the truism in it is statistic pina kodwa, it's a worrying definition. How true is it? As we had said before, let's look at the statistic. What does the statistic tell us? Even though we know sometimes, in fact, most of the time, it's not a true reflection of what is happening in the environment, because initially, the economy for now is not in our hands, meaning that in many instances, an animal yesterday, once he or she sells it into an auction or into a livestock buyer or jegelezayo, invariably the ownership of that animal changes. Ifika ku final market, ifike say ingati it was farmed elsewhere. Meanwhile, that animal was born, raised up to market stage in another environment. So sometimes we might be viewing things in a skewed way, but be it as it is, ladies and gentlemen, there is a definition, and I think it's challenging, it's throwing a gauntlet. Icela umngeni uthi sisonke. In linking what Benke is saying about our livestock farmers, if we were to look at the red meat value chain, this red meat value chain diagram, this was developed by a gentleman called Skruder in 2003. In this red meat value chain, you'll appreciate that we've got what is called the production segment and the marketing segment, of which all the efforts that are being done are mainly to make this animal, this wonderful someone called a consumer. All the efforts of ubethwa ngamaqhwa nemvula nokondla nokuthini are mainly meant to produce wholesome meat that satisfies the consumer. Afike yena athi no ufuna grade A or B njalo njalo uyabona. But what we need to appreciate in this segment is that if the money lies with the consumer, the ultimate price that is paid in the product is paid by the consumer. Meanwhile, a producer is trapped in what we call primary production. Then you've got all the other steps that follow: the trader, the feedlot, the abattoir, the meat processor, the supermarket, ultimately to the consumer. So the product flows that way. And then the money flows the opposite direction. The consumer pays the supermarket, the butchery, and then the supermarket butchery would pay the processor if need be, and the processor would pay the abattoir where he or she got the meat. The abattoir will pay the feedlot or the farmer that sold his animal directly to him or her in this case. So if we are jonga, it means oyena mntu ubhatala kancinci is the producer, and who would be able to eat meat if the producer was not there. And the question we need to ask ourselves, what role can we play in ensuring that somehow, in a way, we move the producer up the red meat value chain, be it an equity space, shareholding, direct role playing. And the question we need to ask, is that too much to ask? Because if we were, for instance, to dig deep into the feedlot environment, most of the feedlots we have in the country are vertically integrated. They almost virtually own the whole space, even the food production. Because what we need, what I didn't mention, red meat value chain, was a producer still has a responsibility of paying input supplier, which has not really been depicted in the red meat value chain that has been demonstrated. Yeah. And then to summarize, ladies and gentlemen, the issues now, if we're to dig deep into the developing sector, the issues that affect the developing sector as constraints, one of the biggest challenges we have production-wise is a dominance of skewed head of flock composition. Mingaphi imizi othi xa ufika kuwo ubale ufanele uba inkabi zingaphezulu kwemazi namathokazi, and umbuzo soloko ubuzwa into yoba le nkabi mangaphi amatakane eyawazala last year, mangaphi amatakane ezawazala this year, mangaphi amatakane ezawazala kulo nyaka uzayo. And then the question is, if ayizalanga kulo nyaka kupheleyo, ingazuzala nakulo nyaka, ingazuzala nalo nyaka uzayo, umbuzo omkhulu igcinelwe ntoni? Because it's costing the farmer something to keep such an animal. So those are questions our farmers need to ask themselves. What is my flock composition? And in terms of the replacement rate, what is it that I can do, depending on the environment, of course, how much can the environment support at a time for me to grow my head? The other constraints esiyadibana nazo there's a market access, where most of our farmers are not well vested on what the buyer is looking for when he or she is buying an animal, especially for slaughter, leading to what we call distrust between the two parties. The buyer distrusts the seller, whilst the seller also distrusts the buyer. Meanwhile, there has to be an engagement process or a transaction that takes place at the end of the day. What intervention measures can we put into place in that? Some of the other constraints relate to monitoring, coupled with record keeping. Mangaphi amafama ethu who record every activity that takes place in their farming enterprise. ukuthengwa kwamayeza, ukuthengwa kwefeed, animals that have been sold, inkomo, animals that have been born, mortalities, winning rates, percentages, you know, because we need to come up with a system where we measure how far we are going. Some of the key challenges that dominate in the communal sector: lack of grazing, especially in the winter months. Summer, when the rains are good, there's the basal cover is there to support the animals. But the question we need to ask ourselves: how much grazing is normally kept for the winter period? Linked to the lack of grazing, dominance of injudicious fires that destroy the little grazing that we have. Situations I had a slide that was showing some fires, but unfortunately, and that was lahleke phina. But we know imeko zemililo yasemakhaya, and the biggest challenge we have is I don't know who changed things. Kwaphela nezanto zoba ufanele ba kune fire control systems within ilali, so that a culprit that just burns umlilo is taken to task. Those are things we need to look at and revisit, and we hope our leader in the sector, Dr. Da, through the policies and systems in place, we would eventually be able to develop systems that emphasize how important it is to look after the little grazing we have in the environments. Some of the constraints, ladies and gentlemen, include poor animal health systems. I've been spending a lot of time visiting farmer around here and other areas. It's shocking to engage a farmer who's been having livestock, where when you engage him or her into okay, when last did you deworm your animals? Impendulo iti yo, not in the past 3 years, 4 years. We're not saying farmers must be what we call syringe mechanics, babalekele yezeni. Kodwa we know that the impact of parasites, internal, external parasites, has got a big bearing on the performance of our livestock. Worse off if umdu is in a communal setup, is not farming in an isolated environment, because in non-action on him or her, especially with issues as no sheep scab, it means amanyama farmer that invest money into buying deworming or scab remedies are wasting their resources, because the next day their animals are going to mingle with this somebody who's not taking any particular care of his or her animals. So we hope within the communal space we could be able to develop systems where everyone takes collective engagement in seeing to it that their animals are taken care of. I'm emphasizing again, ladies and gentlemen, we are not saying farmers must be syringe mechanics every time. We also have to safeguard on issues of creating resistance, be it antibiotic or ectoparasite or worm dewormer resistance. Xa sibuza nemibuzo nge-communal farming of the areas that we farm into, we know that we're not that we're saying it's wrong, but we know that the key feature with communal grazing space ngenxa being taking proactive steps in preventing theft of your animals. The animals are forced to be crawled in the evening. That's the main difference between commercial farming and communal farming. Communal farming, the animals are in the camps. They are only collected as and when there's a need to do something on them. In the communal space, every day, these animals zilale planti. It's like imoto yomntu ohlala emakhaya. For you to have a fuel, you must drive to town. Ubungwasela hlangu bengcobo or ungwase eqamdoboa eXesi. You have to go to Middle Drift or Dimbaza unemoto for a fuel. Ifana injalo ke nemfuyo evalelwayo, for it to have energy for sustenance and growth, it must go to graze. But if it doesn't have enough energy to reach the grazing area, izawubuthisa. So the bulk of the energy, this animal, it spends in walking up and down between the veld and the grazing area. The question is, singenza njani if we were to come up with measures that try and create a bit of a positive balance that favors the performance of this animal. One of the other key features within the communal sector is that most of the time animals lamb in the early or winter months against the plane of nutrition. Sikhale sibe ne challenges ba hey hayi siwazala mntakabawo ziliwashiya apho lo matakane. Imagine xa izawashiya amatakane emahle ngolhlobo. Look at this ewe with triplets. If it were to lamb during the low plane nutrition time period, it means this animal has a big challenge to sustain these lambs. The farmer will have somehow to find ways and means of ensuring that there's enough feed for the ewe and the lambs. In sending the message of the day, ladies and gentlemen, there are essentially three main things we're going to talk about that affect the performance of one's animals. Number one, the nutritional requirements. A wise man was once asked to come and help with a sick animal. When he came and saw the animal, he said, no, what I'm seeing, this animal is not sick. It has got a problem with vitamin course, meaning that this animal, in other words, the only sickness it has is that it's not being fed enough. And if we were to break down the nutritional requirements, briefly, ladies and gentlemen, we know that an adult animal who sustainer eats 3% of its body weight. A lactating ewe has got to sustain itself, also has got to produce enough milk for the lambs. So you need to feed the lactating ewe more than you feed an animal that is not lactating. Lambs, because they are growing, still at a growing stage, they would need around 10% of their body weight to be on a day for them to sustain themselves. So we then need to convert that to quantities. How many liters if it's liquids, how many kilograms if the solids. And then in terms of the feed ingredients, we need to feed an animal a balanced diet, and a balanced diet has got to have enough proteins, has got have enough carbohydrates, has got to have enough macro minerals, your calcium, your phosphorus, has got to have enough trace minerals. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, if I were to mention good trace minerals, one of the essential trace minerals is copper, which is linked to sulfur and zinc. You don't see visual clinical signs on the animal being sick, but one of the key features we always explain when you talk about an animal that has got copper deficiency, it has got spectacle eyes. Iyakhuthuka around amehlo la namadolo athi qhuqhu. That's usually an indication of trace minerals. But you cannot only supplement copper, you'd have to supplement the whole range of the minerals, the vitamins, crude fiber. Ruminants need fiber for them to perform as ruminants, for the ruminant to be active. Without that, we would have challenges. That's why we always say you cannot feed your animals umbona wodwa. Where's the roughage in this case? And one of the key important features of looking after your livestock, availability of clean drinking water. I think we need to emphasize that a million times. Availability of clean drinking water is of essence. We've talked about nutrition, and then also a farmer has a responsibility to deal with internal parasites, what we call worms. But broadly, listen, gentlemen, when we talk about internal parasites, we need to emphasize that we have 3 types of internal parasites mainly. We've got roundworms, we've got tapeworms, which is mainly the milk tapeworm, and then also the other tapeworm, the one that affects the meat quality. Lento sithi imasisi ngesixhosa, ufike uba ubuxhele inkomo okanye igusha okanye ihagu ikhondem eAbhat ukuba kuthiwe no inemasisi, ine-measles. It's a bit of a misnomer in terms of its definition. It's mainly more of a tapeworm more than anything. We are got ye kuba nje ngesintu ukuthi hayi man into enemasisi iyatyiwa lo nyama, uthi xa uyipheka imbiza isiciwe sungasivali ukwenzela uba le ubungozi obuphume ngomphunga lo njengoba imbiza ivuthwa. Unfortunately, that's a too much simplistic approach, ladies and gentlemen. Ngokwase Abato, into measles, it's put into a deep freeze, minus 18 degrees Celsius for 3 days, and then it's inspected. If it has been cured, then that meat is passed, but definitely the quality is already gone. That's why the price goes down. But if the animal, that carcass has got to be condemned, you won't get anything for your meat in this case. So unfortunately, those tapeworms revolve around abantu, so we need to encourage ukusetyenziswa kwe-toilets ngabantu, also revolve around izinja. We also need to encourage ukudiwema kwezinja on a regular basis, so that amaqanda azo xa zibeke edlelweni angaphele tyiwa bimbilizwa imfuyo iphele iba nemasisi or these cystococcal or tinea ngamanye amagama. And then the other internal parasite noteworthy to talk about the flukes, which is mainly 2 groups of flukes, liver fluke, conical fluke, mostly, which nakhona we need to emphasize into yoba kwi-flukes, the most dangerous flukes are your immatures, those ones that are growing. I'm sure sike sibone xa kuxheliwe sifike kukho into engathi yi-rice apha kumswane kulusu. Those are mature conical flukes. Zona, they do not cause any damage or pathology on the animal. It's the immatures that cause the problem, which you find them in the abomasum, in the true stomach, ezosifumana kwinjeke. those that you find on the rumen are retired, are only living on what they can get from the ingester on the animal. So when you choose a product, you must choose a product effective against immatures. If it works against flukes, you need to dig deep about the program. And then here's an example of internal parasites. On the top left, it's your wireworm, Haemonchus contortus. In the middle, it's an example of an EPG, and the lab assessment of worm load on an animal. Worms, ladies and gentlemen, a worm like this wireworm can lay almost 10,000 eggs, E1. So when you see one wireworm, but there's a potential of 10,000 wireworms that you are likely to see that will come out from that one. So imagine if this animal would have of 100 wireworm internal parasites in itself, but eating potential of that. And then the bottom right is an example of the milk tapeworm. The third responsibility that the farmer has got to deal with is the issue that relates to external parasites. And it's a big well, it's a plethora of external parasites that we have to deal with. We've got ticks, we've got mites, as in Ebola, sheepscape, we've got flies that will lead into a screwworm infestation or blowfly strike. Sine ndwala, nendwala, they are into two groups, biting lice, sucking lice. And the choice of product has got a bearing on how you control these lice. Injectables like Otalimec will control the sucking lice, not the biting lice. Dipping will control the biting lice. So when we are dealing with controlling lice, we definitely need to choose a mechanism, the best fitting mechanism. So you must determine it over that I'm dealing with. Then kubene mosquitoes that bring you a blue tongue, kubene midges, imbuzane that also are carriers of other diseases. So all that being said, listen to me. This is my last slide. We are saying we've mentioned everything, scoping the environment. Where are we singamafama mnyama at a national level? Where are we singamafama mnyama at a provincial level? And then we also need to ask ourselves, where are we singamafama mnyama at a district level? Where are we singamafama mnyama at a local municipality level? Where are we singamafama mnyama at a ward level? Into ethi kuloo ndawo ndikuyo mandiphakamisa isandla ndibonakale laa nto kuthiwa phakama nkosikazi bakubone. Sivumeleni ke mawethu sithi phakama mfama xa sisiba kule nto phakama nkosikazi bakubone. Phakama mfama sikubone uba uphi kwindawo kuyo, indima oyidlalayo ingakanani na. Umphako esikushiya nawo ke xa uzawudevelopha uzawuzenzela uqulunqa sheep condition disease flock health program. Number one, you would have to keep in mind there are tick-borne diseases ezifana ne-heartwater, umkhondo. Zenzeka what time of the year, what systems do I need to put into my plan to control them. Kunezifo ekuthiwa zii-clostridial diseases. Clostridial diseases is a group of bacteria, gram-positive bacteria, ezingumkhosi. They affect the animal in many ways. You've got pulpy kidneys, an example of a clostridial disease. You've got tetanus, it's an example of a clostridial disease. You've got botulism, umbatalala, that's an example of a clostridial disease. Nezinye, gas gangrene, black water, those all fall under clostridial diseases. And there are combination products in the market that work very well against them. But what is always important is timing is of essence in this case. We've got the pastorella, ekuthiwa xa ichaza ukuthi iyafana nale nto kuthiwa xa umuntu ethatha intonga yegqirheni ukuthi hayi ke ukufa kusemlenzeni uhamba nako. Izifo ezifana nepastorella are in every flock. Whether one is the best farmer or not, you would have a challenge with pastorella because the bacteria reside inside the body. It only shows itself when the animal is stressed, and isilwanyana sistresseka ngendlela ukutshisa kwamadlelo, ukunetha kwemvula, ingqele, ukuhanjiswa. All those lead to stress within an animal. And as long as you have stress, pastorella is bound to show itself. Also, you have to take cognizance of izifo ezithwalwa zizinambuzane, vector-borne diseases, izifo ezifana no-blue tongue, Wesselsbron, Rift Valley fever, you know, Rift Valley fever, mentioned ngabom of late, nangona inqabile, is one of, it's beginning to be more common, and the biggest challenge, Rift Valley fever, it falls into the group of zoonotic diseases. Its prevalence can have a bearing on the livelihood yabantu, can cause a sickness that can even lead to death sometimes. No, though not that often, but it's very key. Izifo ezifana no-enzootic abortion, uphunzo kwimpahla emfutshane, umfama funeka ayibekele engqondweni into yoba I've got there are challenges like these. Izinto ezifana no-coccidiosis, ngakumbi ngenxa yoba sifuya ngoba amatakane ngenxa yemeko ahlala ebuhlanti emgqubeni ngelinye ixesha achole izibi ezifana no-coccidiosis aphele rhuda uba waqatshelwanga abe zezono zingaphu, very weak worms that take time to grow or worse off die. Also for wool farmers, of which the majority of the farmers we engage with, sheep scab, one of the biggest problems. So we saying, ladies and gentlemen, as farmers, we need to take cognizance. Funa siqaphele ezi zinto nendima ezidlalayo u-includa nezinto ezifana nochwane ngakumbi xa kugxovugxovu ebuhlanti. And then to close off, ladies and gentlemen, would summarize to say, if you're now to develop your flock health, you need to consider your key diseases. You need to look at the farming area ukuyo, ungaba uku-inland okanye coastal. Ingxaki zethu asifani. Inland areas kuyabanda. Ubuko siko Elliot no Komani no Hewu kuyabanda ngakumbi ebusika. So there are certain things that you'll have to do that farmer or coastal area need not to worry about. Weather conditions besendizibekile, lambing season, zizala nini igusha zakho, zizala ebusika, zizala entwasahlobo. That has got a bearing on the needs of the animals. Ucheba nini, ungabe ucheba ekwindla, you do share your sheep in the autumn season, meaning that if you share them that time and we've got early winter that sets in, if you don't have facilities to prevent your animals from cold, in cold weather storms, you might be in for it. Breeding season has got a bearing on the lambing season. Those two things are linked. There are things uSikhomo uzawuthetha ngazo in his presentation esithi xa sizibiza i-flushing. How do I prepare my animals for breeding so that xa zidibene nenkunzi zithathe? What are the existing market opportunities? How do I make sure that I maximize on those market opportunities? Ingaba, do we have pastures now? Pastures, permanent pastures, have got a bearing on your parasite control. Sinento sibiza, ladies and gentlemen, city PPPP, the 4 Ps. Permanent pastures perpetuate parasites. Permanent pastures perpetuate parasites. So if ungumfama onamadlelo onkcenkceshelayo, it means your worm control has got to be, effort has got to be much bigger than umuntu ongenazo pastures, because by virtue of this, those pastures will perpetuate your parasites. Your physiological condition of your animals. Pregnant animals, zinida lando city TCE, TLCE, ladies and gentlemen, tender love and care extravaganza, TLCE, tender love and care extravaganza. And then also the nutritional plane of your animals, it's of the environment is very important. It has got a bearing on whether in looking after your animals. And as we know, if your grazing is not enough, it's going to be costly. You have to buy, or meaning that you have to reduce your flock if the pocket ayanelanga. And then also the type of the farming system, including your grazing patterns, meaning that uba siselalini kulo lali sikuyo, ayikusanele into yoba sibe ngamavula avalele ezasemancirheni ziphume ziye ngasentabeni, ezasematshaweni ziye ngasentlanjeni, ezinye ziye ngasemasimini. We need to take a common approach in looking after our animals. Ladies and gentlemen, ngenxa yexesha, allow me to say, in trying to paint a picture of how do I maximize in the environment, all we're saying kumafama, yazi imfuyo yakho, know where you are, know where you are going. But as you know, only together we can make it, not as individuals. So in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, last 65% is not enough. Ngokwepondo abe ngu7% contribution. There's a lot that we need to do. Ngalo mazwi mazenethole, thank you for listening to us. May God bless. Ukwanda kwalwa ngumthakathi enkosi.
Enkosi Dr. Ngethu. Sibulela kakhulu ngale presentation. Ndiyathemba ke bonke abantu abakhona bathathile incwadi, bathatha notes, bathatha questions, because after utata uFundile ngenile sizawunikeza ixesha lemibuzo. Tata uFundile, besilinde wena. Uzawungena ke ngoku uthetha ke nge-communal farming for profit as an acting farmer perspective. So sinikela kuwe ke enkosi.
Bawuscom, into mawuyenze vula izilights zakho. Uye ushare parla arrow iphanga ku leave. Uyabuba uklikhe pha uklikhe nje landa ingathi ibox apha emazantsi. Ubheke pha izilidini uzakwazi usharisha. Enkosi.
Ndicinga into okokubana utata uSikhomo uyadinga uba simncedise I don't know uba ngubani ongamncedisa kwelaa cala.
Hello.
Ungathi right ngoMr Mkondeli ungathetha.
Ndibulise kuye wonke umuntu okhoyo. Hello. Mande insizwe lembeko ndibulise kuye wonke umuntu okhoyo apha kule webinar. Besele ndazisiwe ke ndiyavakala ngapha. Hello. Hello. Ndiyavakala.
Uyavakala ngokhile, uyavakala.
Thank you. Thank you. Mandenze is Mandenze insizwe lembeko ndibulise kuye wonke umuntu okhoyo apha kule webinar. Ndiyabona uba i-technology iyasi-expose mpela. Be that as it may, ndicinga uba on the other side, a positive side from my side, efama ke ndiyayibulela into yobana ndibe kanti ndizawuthetha emva koDr Ngethu. Ibe ndim ke ngomane ukuthi njengoba uDr Ngethu ebetshilo iyandi-elevate ke ngokuloo nto. Mna ndiyi-Communal farmer ekhaya. You would know if you're getting into farming, is always being said, substance farmer, farmishela ukutya. I farm for profit. How do I do? Masifumane ke ngoku izilights zethu ukuzova uba senza kanjani na. Ndiqale ke sheep farming ngo-October 2017. And I read those 21 ewes which I bought from Engcobo, Nxamakele, and improved the genetics of their offspring by having a ram which I had to borrow from a local or a fellow farmer from Ekpaga. And I also accumulated some more Donny Merinos over time. And to date, I must say, I've 204 sheep, and then 43 winged lambs, and 17 lambs which are still with their ewes, and I'm expecting 20 more lambs. And then of the 204, 6 merino rams are included in that 204. And dinazo ingabi. Ingabi, I normally share them once and then sell them, or twice and sell them. I don't keep them for long because keeping them for long is expensive for me. Now, Chinake in that area, we normally get lambs from June to July and sometimes up to August. What I did here, in 2019 October, I had to approach Talitha so that they be engaged with synchronization program. wherein I selected 20 Donny Merinos and 4 Merino rams, and then I prepared them by deworming them and vaccinated with a Coglavax. And then I fed them twice a day with yellow maize, loosened pellets, and salt, so that when they mate, they are in good stead. And indeed, I did that. Then I got my lambs very early the following year. So it did give me some results, because I had about 18 sheep that gave birth early as I wanted to. Now, with that, with synchronization, from day one, we put in sponges, and then from day 14, we removed them, and then we then injected with PMSG. And then 48 hours later, then we allowed them to mate. And then as they were pregnant, at 4 to 6 weeks before lambing, then we put on Coglavax, 2 mil Coglavax and 2 mil Pastorella, our Pasquafele, deworm them. Now, as part of sheep management, I then created 4 crawls. The first crawl, that's where once an ewe gives a lamb, then I put it into that crawl, so that they can bond there. It can also be easy for it when it looks for its mother. That's where they stay. Then they are fed twice a day with the crib feed. Injongo of putting in crib feed is for them as a hlise, and also for lambs to learn how to eat crib feed, because lambs learn from curiosity. If you look at that slide, that's how I developed those crawls. Apha nganeno kwegate apha right, kwale gate ibona ijonga apha kuwe. Crawl number 4, ngapha kwegate crawl number 3, kuba buhlanti benziwe ngezitena crawl number 2, kuba buhlanti ngapha kwezitena, kuba buhlanti bezitena crawl number 1. And then crawl number 2 ndihlasa phaya amatakane onyaka ophelileyo aphuma phaya ngoSeptemba emveni koba kugqitywe uchetywa. Apha number 3 kuhlala ezi zingekazali kunye neenkunzi. Then ezi ke ngoku zinamatakane, they stay with amatakane azo for 4 weeks, 24/7. Then that crawl, then from that crawl, I accumulated yard as the around my house. That's why I put them, feed them there. Now, once they are 5 to 10 weeks, then the gusha zihambe zibheke and travel all the distances. Then they come back at 5. So during that period, I feed lamatakane and crib feed 4 times a day. So by the time zibuya, so amatakane are right, and then just uba athobe nje. And then crib feed yam indlela endiyenza ngayo yile. I take 640 kg crushed maize, 2 times 25 kg crushed loosening bales, and then a 40 kg bag of gem meal, a 50 kg bag of soya meal. Soya meal has got about 33% of protein. And then the other 50 kg molasses meal, 50 kg SS200, 40 kg lemon U pellets, 50 kg coarse salt. Is very important in feed is especially bush, because bush has to have about 9 grams salt every day, while some other must have at least half that. And then I put in feed lime. Feed lime helps me so that because of change from only, and they are now consuming solids, then it likely is that system is going to, there should be some disturbance, and then you can see them having diarrhea. So if it lime helps in that. There you are. That's how I make my creep feed. Sale and then the pansi, liholo lam earlier, and then the mix even with the containers, I'm a drum. Behind our band bar mixer, the sorting table, because I'm using the same venue for sharing. Ship management continued. For 11 weeks, I win them permanently. And then continue again with la feeding. Allah got the board of plant. As a mass, I take them to crow number 3. Abos of Shalakona, Unines need Kusha in Gazali, Uninen Kuns. And then Landelayo was the Shalapaya, and then Amatagana Dua manager order. And it's Nakasabuya and I manage them as the Shalagunta and says it can live alone. Then there's also a part of a plant again, is on your pellets of Kalpaigo, as your Tibana Union Cones, your guess as good as mine, but when's I don't get up. Health management continued. Exactly, the limited on wood of Tangi do get before me. I do eat ranch dipping 4 times a year. The time of September, the linders is Polaman labor. So there's an October, and Sibiang got pinned dipping of December, Sibiang and Tibo February, Sibiang. Then the last time decided to try to be in April, 7 Sagamitras, with 4.5 deep. After the winter, the cyber pour on. The Kalanja we condemn and try a brush. Upper go make Pakato was now tumbling because that's why you find it takes a Talakon. And then and the man I know if no sense of Quilang so that Zoga spread it throughout. And then the Prince a Coglavax, the Pastorella, as a vaccine once per year. Material, then Amatagano then do it directly, same measurement. Then every quarter again, the students are tenalin, 5 milli kushanganye, then they 1 milli talimax, even 10 milli max care, the students again alternately with Italirox, so that it's not clearly max care. Then the by Julubeling as was it too. Health management continued. I want to raise Amatagan all the time because you must watch them. Kai Puma, watch them, try again. Because Amani is born by I Hambi is born by Amani then I need the attention. I always have a carrot remain inside because we call it net area. I always in the Salandina max care and the Salandina Shemaisin those and then Kandi wa Lumla was a of me for money trace elements. That's minerals, sorry. Record keeping the Nenga then deny Apple when it can Lizala, okay, in the Tenga Igusha, so when the record the Ganga from so and so and has the particular Sake, and the most of the Tagana Igusha would number goes Galate Chile and not the columns. Galate igusha ngu-tag number so and so, izele itakane eli-male or female, i-condition yegusha kunye netakane injani, and then nditag netakane and. So I'm able to trace itakane uba lizalwa ephi igusha, and that gusha izele amatakane amangaki. As tags ke zonke ezibhinqileyo ndifake tag on the left ear, and then ezizinkunzi or amaduna, the tag is on the right hand side. I can see them zihambela nje phaa. I-tags it's bright yellow color, it's written my name, my cell number, the number of the ship, dash, then the number of the year endithele ngayo okanye ezelwe ngayo. Then enye indlebe lengena-tag ndifake ithathu kuyo. Thathu ke and comply with umthetho because Act number 8 where Animal Identification Act requires the zibbrand lezibanyana. Amatakane ke ndiwayenza wona only ngoSeptember even mandigqibocheba because la into izawudakisa. And then iyandincedisa ke le tagging for i-administration. Also, when xa ilahlekile umuntu oyibonileyo just calls that number or andithumele call back and then I respond, and that's how I get them if there's anyone that is lost. Then xa ndiwalumla ndiyawarekhodisha iweight yawo. Health management continued. Now sendithethile ke mos sendithethile nge-health management uba ndigcina ndinayo for the-emergency xa sibehambise and all that. Record keeping sithethile ngayo. There you are, yenye iiyadi ezisecaleni komzi wam lena kulapho amatakane ndiwafake khona ayazityela phaya, as you can see. Fed 4 times. Good production outcomes. As I said in 2017, 2018, I shared them for the first time. I was sharing 49 sheep. Now the cages and this is 126 in total, and then I got about 10,000. And then we categorize the pie and the color AF and now AAF and now AAH. The national scab as well, 1 kg. That was for the first time. Then I scab, then I improved to Minyakulandelayo. The Minyakulandelayo, the rams were weighed separately. I had 2 rams, they made 12 kgs. And then they had the AAF, zona kgs in 17 hours, 132 kg. It total ends at 428 kgs, and I got about 17,000. If you see, this is the kind of food that I produce. At 2,000 each. And there you are. Last year, they pali long 182 kg AAF. Pali long 111 kgs yebang BF. Pali long and the Tibansa Mkolo no CBB locks. And I got about 30,000. Projections. For 2021. I'll be showing 204 sheep, as I said, but not 204 ngok. And then I projected 50,000. It's not a thumbs up figure there. I think there's about 244 in Gekushangani on average. It be found by more in the Georgia because kunegusha ezingeyo merino nodoni merino sisithi ke umgqutsuba abantu bazi ke abayithandi ke elo gama kodwa ke if no name ke umgqutsuba ke. And then
if you multiply 244 and menza by 204, unika somewhere closer to 50,000. So I will come back figure there. And then dinner rams that I'm selling them at 2,000 rand each. People have come and order and make an order years 11. And then baz the Sazragodisha in that same book. And then they're waiting for me to finish Kayabang September, which is next month. And I'm looking at 22,000. So 22,000 plus 50,000, 77,000, because I'm farming for profit. And engagement endiyenza i-CDC ndidiyaniswe kunye ne-business consultant yakhona. I want to pursue the export igusha that I've shared 4 times or ezi zizinkabi ngizazicheba kabini then ziye enqanaweni zibheke eKuwait. And then apho ke ndijonge igusha ezabe senza u50 kgs because i-kg pha is 50 rand. And then if igusha makes 50 kg, that's 50 times 50 ngu-2,500. So if ndifaka 40, then that's 100,000. Each year ndifake 40. And then and it's doable. Dream yam, I want to be there to export pha igusha. And then elandelayo dream is to export uboya to China, particularly because currently about 70% yoboya xa ndibisake BKB auction bubheka eChina. Then ndifuna uba ku-100,000, and it's realistic, it can happen because currently I'm having 61 lambs, and then next year I'll be having 140, 150 lambs. So Elonani can take me to La Figa. So it is realistic. It challenges. As I said before, the seventh yard of my neighbors that are around as then in the Faga Matagane. But in end, so long like we are panda and as a result, I must always have Cura clocks, clock kit, clock first aid kit. And then I'm using communal pastures for grazing. What Dr. Nged was talking about, they travel that far. Now the people that are putting sites on the very same grazing land, and now it means the grazing land is becoming is decreasing. Any challenge is that when they stay there, and they attack my sheep, especially during the season here. When during the season when they are when they are breeding, because so so there's the and then as the benefits also amanzi, I rely on tap water, and lamanzi are clean. Dr. Nged was talking about the containers upper for them class beer and zosela. I put in a multi tablet for like once a week because I containers. And then now the line amanzi which often runs dry. If I would have a borehole, it would be better. Also, with the increase in flock, I mean, imagine now I'm talking this year with the lambs that I'm expecting about 80 lambs this year. 204, it will be 284, and then as years go by, it means I shall be having more flock, and then I'm going to run short of a feed. I must mention the fact that I did benefit from a livestock genetic improvement program. I got a ram out of the 5 rams which we received as an association, because we decided let a person keep a ram so that one can look after it, and then when it's needed by someone, then it goes to that other person as well if they rotate. It would be